Hey, everybody, Dave Hagan here. Remember about a year we were talking with one millennial about her journey through coronavirus? Well, we're going to check back up with her. That's today on the Financial Wellness Podcast.
Welcome to the Financial Wellness Podcast, Dave's weekly message to keep you on your path to financial success. Here is your host, financial problem solver and talk show host, Dave Hagan.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 416 of the Financial Wellness Podcast, or TFWP, as we like to call it. We're coming to you today live from Las Vegas, Nevada, Pasadena, California, and Topanga, California. So we've got lots of people across the Western United States getting together to bring this to you. Brian and Nick have the week off. I told them, hey, I got this. We're going to interview Amanda again. I can do this all by myself. So they're taking the week off. Now, a lot of you might remember back in May, almost a year ago, May 2020, when we were in the throes of the coronavirus circumstance that we had here in the United States, epidemic, really, if you will. In episode 312, we talked to Amanda about her journey through coronavirus 19, and she talked about her personal financial plan and how that had been affected by the coronavirus circumstance. Well, Amanda's back. Welcome, Amanda, to the show.
Thank you for having me again.
Hey, it's good to see you. I don't think, we do this on Zoom, so I have a video here. I don't think I've seen you in a year or something, right?
Probably about a year.
It's crazy. It's just crazy. Well, welcome. Now, let me set the table just a little bit about the last time that we spoke with Amanda. First of all, Amanda's may or may not be her real name. I thought about using a different name this time, like Agatha or Inga or something like that. But Amanda seems to suit her so well, so we're going to use that name. But it might not be her real name. You never know. Amanda's a recent college grad at 2-3 years now. She works in the hospitality industry. She was laid off in last May, June, something like that. And she got some personal finance information early last year before the coronavirus actually hit. And she put together an emergency fund of 3 months, as I recall. And her plan was to be debt-free by October of 2020. But the most important or interesting thing to me was she calculated that her burn rate, and that is her unemployment plus a piece of her security fund, would last her until about November. And Amanda, I think I heard you say some things like, wow, I really, even though everything's going to hell in a handbasket, I really don't feel like I have any financial stress. I also heard you say it's kind of surprisingly easy to save as you were kind of adjusting your finances and putting this emergency fund together. I heard you talk about the joy of being debt free. You talked about that, and I could hear it in your voice. And we've talked so many times on the podcast about the joy of being debt free. And we talked about the fact that it was an emotional goal for you. I mean, something that you had to adopt on a very visceral level. And you may or may not know that, but our theme this year is, personal financial success is more about the heart than the head. So we talk about this often this week or this year, this whole issue of it being an emotional goal. And then, a couple of weeks ago on the podcast, we were talking about, security funds or emergency funds. And we said, hey, I wonder how Amanda's doing now that we're past November of 2020. This is now April of 2021. And I said, let's see if we can bring Amanda back. And then a couple of weeks ago, we did an episode on, is it time to rethink the size of a person's emergency fund in light of the fact that this coronavirus thing lasted for, a year. I mean, it's still lasting, even though we may be very well on the tail end of this thing. So I thought what we do is bring back Amanda, and to quote Billy Ray Valentine in Trading Places, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Can't complain. Financially, like I said, I was my goal was October to pay off that debt, and unfortunately, that goal didn't happen. But my debt did get paid off, which is the end all be
Sweet.
end. Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah, so I was very happy about that. And I think when we first talked, especially in regards to, comfortability and payments and whatnot, there was, the unemployment was significantly better than it ended up being towards that tail end.
Hmm.
And so I did have to dig into that security, that emergency fund a little bit, which I was really glad I was able to make it, especially as the holidays came up, and you tend to spend a little bit more even on a budget than you typically would in any other given month.
Right. Not a budget. Here we call it a spending plan,
A
monthly
spending plan,
spending
yeah,
plan.
spending
Yes,
plan.
yes.
So I like that more. That makes it
Yes.
sound more fun.
That sounds like something you really want to go after rather than like
Yeah,
being on
budget
a
sounds,
diet where you go, oh, I don't want to
yeah.
do that. Yeah.
Budget sounds too restrictive, whereas spending plan makes it sound like, yeah, you're gonna be frugal and you're going to be cautious, but you're still having fun. So I like
Right, right. When we spoke last year, you said that you gave yourself a couple months to
that.
kind of adjust, and then you said, "I'm going to have to go out and look for a job."
Yes.
You said that you would be more than happy to go back to the old job if they called you back. But I think I heard that you're doing something different. Tell us about that.
I am a little bit different. So I recently got a job within the last month. So I was
Hmm.
very happy about that.
Congratulations!
Thank you. Almost 11 months of unemployment.
Wow.
And that was hitting the job market hard, trying to get, traction for anything. And finally,
Hmm.
I hit the kind of the perfect opportunity, which is a corporate event planner for a my current corporation,
Hmm.
which basically we're doing virtual events now. So
Right.
still within the hospitality realm, just a little
Hmm.
bit of a pivot, hopefully getting back into live events pretty quickly.
Hmm.
But still within hospitality and hospitality management, which is really what my passion is. So
Sweet, sweet. And better job,
better job. Yes.
more
Better
money,
opportunity,
more money,
more money.
more money, better benefits.
No, not better benefits, but more money for sure.
Hmm.
And that's just the nature of the job switch that I did.
Hmm. Hmm.
CVBs are, famous for their amazing benefits. But
Hmm.
at
Hmm.
my age, and my young age, I was willing to sacrifice, maybe not as good of a healthcare plan,
Right.
and just an okay one
Hmm.
for continual growth in my
Right.
career and continual projection in that industry.
Right. Right. Now, did the old job contact you and
Not
say,
yet.
"Hey, coming"?
No,
So,
not
so
yet.
they're not back yet.
They are not, and CVBs, which stands for Convention and Visitors Bureaus, they are
Hmm.
not projected to come back for quite a while.
Hmm.
They're still struggling and kind of slowly but surely coming back. But I'm sure as soon as they do, they'll give me a call.
Right. And you said you would go back, but you found something else
Yeah,
better. And I love that because the cream rises to the top, I always say.
exactly. And like I loved my old job. I really
Hmm.
did. But
Hmm.
this is a better position for me, better opportunity,
Yeah.
and project it throws me further along into my career.
Right, right. And for our listeners, I think that there's an important point to be made, and that is there's a lot of good jobs that are going to be ready to be restaffed here in the next several months. And there's tons of opportunity out there because jobs like maybe Amanda's old job, which she said was a killer job, is available or will be restaffed soon because she's gone on to something maybe a little bigger, maybe a little better. So lots of room for optimism out there. It seems to me.
It's definitely and just talking to my future sister-in-law, she is a recruiter, and she's saying now that they're getting, she's just busy every day. She could work 12 hours a day trying to fill these job roles with companies who are saying, okay, we're coming back now,
Mm-hmm.
and we need to fill these roles for this anticipated, um, you know, anticipated.
Boom.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. The Roaring Twenties followed, um, the virus scare that we had in, what was it, 1918,
Yeah.
where so many people died. And there was such a boom after that. So I'm hoping that we're going to see a similar kind of boom, because I think there's a lot of pent up demand. I mean, I don't know about you, but my friends and I, we all want to go back and sit in restaurants or go see a movie, or,
Oh
you
yeah.
know, and it's time, almost time. It's
Yeah.
almost time, you
Oh,
know. Now this is all, upside. Let me take you back just a little bit, if I can, to like November.
yeah.
So last November, your funds are, or your projected funds are running out. You're
Hmm.
still getting unemployment, right?
And
And go
sorry,
ahead.
go ahead. Go ahead.
And your unemployment, you're still getting your unemployment, and your emergency fund is starting to dwindle down. So tell me a little bit about what that was like.
Well, and especially when we spoke in May, I never imagined I would still be unemployed by October. I thought,
Right,
"Oh, I'm gonna blow
right,
over. I'll get a job. I'll find something. I
right.
couldn't even get an interview." And I was doing, I think at the end of my unemployment, I had done over 1,000 job applications, and
Mm-hmm.
so I was getting no traction, not a single interview by October. And
Wow.
so and by that time the federal assistance and unemployment had ceased. And
Mm-hmm.
so in the state of California, on these, this is a total different conversation, but in my experience and where I live in Pasadena, and I share a one bedroom apartment, it was just not feasible to live off the state given unemployment.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't getting enough to even pay my rent.
Mm-hmm.
And so fortunately I lived with somebody who was very supplemental to that, and that was a
Mm-hmm.
blessing that I had that I know a lot of people don't
Mm-hmm.
have. So I did have to dig into that. That's at that point it was a small savings that I had
Mm-hmm.
um accumulated over the time period, which amounted up to about 5 months,
Mm-hmm.
4 months.
Good for you. 5 months. Okay. Good. Good. Good.
Yeah. So I was able to dig into that, and because I was digging into my savings, I wasn't able to pay off the debt that I wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
And paying off the minimum pay, or a little bit more than the minimum payment, just to try and kind of chip away at it. But it wasn't until January, with the new stimulus uh, check that came,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
eventually in March getting a new job, that really,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of my financial wellness kind of was made complete.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you were getting the state unemployment, and then you were also getting the supplement that came through the federal government as well.
Yes, but that the federal government supplement stopped in October, and it did not
Mm-hmm.
continue again until I believe January. So
Okay.
those 3 months where it was less than $600 a week,
Mm-hmm.
in my old job, that was I was making 2 to 3 times that amount.
Sure.
And where we lived, where we are, and not even our lifestyle, but where we live was really dependent on the income that I was bringing in.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're not bringing in that income, things get a little tight.
Oh
So
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I'd heard through the grapevine that what, November, December, January were pretty gritty for you.
oh yeah, it was very very tough. um and those were probably, you talk about feeling happy in your heart about spending, and I wasn't feeling that. Whenever you're in such a low place, there's the stress that comes with
Mm-hmm.
it.
Mm-hmm.
And especially with my partner, uh,
Mm-hmm.
we're getting married, and I didn't want to bring
Yo! Congratulations.
thank you,
Oh, we
thank
got to talk about that in a couple
you.
minutes. Oh my goodness.
Yes, but at this point, I was thinking, like, I don't want to bring my financial baggage into our marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was, um, those that were definitely playing through the mind. And then also the holidays were going on, and the expectation of Christmas gifts. Of course, during coronavirus, everybody in my life and my family was like, "Don't do it; it's fine." But there's
Mm-hmm.
still that expectation, and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
of course, you're still doing it, even though they tell you not to, and even though it might not be the best financial advice or
Right.
you, um, but it's
But
still something you do.
But even with the potential financial backstop of your fiance and potential backstop of your family, neither of which you really wanted to have to,
Yes.
utilize. Um, and even with your emergency fund,
Mhm.
even with all those things as backstops, it still got a little gritty for you in
Yeah.
November, December, January.
Yes, and I would say by the time of end of like going into January, I had
Hmm.
about a little more than a month worth of emergency fund, and that to me was just, I have to get a job now.
Right.
And I was doing odd jobs. I was laying wood floor to like just have, get my
That's right. I heard that.
yeah,
Yeah.
I was laying wood floor at my uncle's house
Good
just
for
to
you.
get a little bit of a head, put a little money in, and doing what you can. Also,
Mhm.
it's a great way to spend my time. So,
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, it helped with the boredom, but it also brought in a little
get
cash,
a little cash. That
you know? And I think another thing for our listeners to think about, sometimes when times get tough, you do whatever you gotta do.
yeah, you are. I think my dad told me this years ago. Is you're not too good to do anything.
Yeah.
So if you are in a situation and you have to, go back to the drawing board and get an entry level job, you got to get an entry level job. That's what
Mhm.
just what you got to do. You're not too good for anything.
Mhm.
Um, and coronavirus is kind of a humbling experience. So,
Sure, sure. Well, and I've told people too that your career path and your personal financial wellness is
mhm,
not always an upward line. It seems like it's going to be that way when you're younger, but it's going to be more like a stock market graph over
mhm,
the period of your life. You're going to have some highs and then some lows and then some highs. And the idea is, to have the highs outweigh the lows so that the line overall is going up, but it's not always a straight line up, and you got to be ready for that.
exactly.
Or as Henry Ford said, you only have to be right the last time. I really love that.
That's great.
So, all right, going back to this tough time, the beginning of the year. So then what happened? You got 1,000 rezos out. You're not getting any callbacks. You're getting a couple interviews here and there. So then what happens?
So, I mean, it kind of was just like a numbers game. I would kept
Mm-hmm.
putting myself out there, kept putting multiple job platforms. There for a while, I was only on LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
Then switching it up, looking on all sorts of job application sites,
Mm-hmm.
and just a numbers game. I set a goal in my head of this is how many applications you have to do a day.
Mm-hmm.
And on average, I was doing 30 to 50 job applications a week.
Wow.
Um, and so it came down to the numbers game, and finally I found this position with a company that I actually had worked with in the past
Mm-hmm.
at the Pasadena Convention Center. And it is a events experience agency, and so I contacted her and was able to work that contact. And never forget your professional contacts, because
Right.
they and in the end they are your greatest tools and helpful successes. um it's reaching out to her and being a familiar face and being like, hey, I'm interested in the position you have to offer, and it
Mm-hmm.
was perfect. And an opportunity to also work with old colleagues.
Sure.
Back
Sure.
in
Now let me ask you this though. I mean, here's a job that you really, 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 really need.
hmm
Here's a job that's better in many ways than your old job, and yet you don't want to appear too anxious. What was it hard to be cool
it was
and
a
just go,
little hard
well,
to school
I'd do that. Yeah.
also. Like I said, coronavirus was a little bit of a humbling experience, but it was also an opportunity for me to evaluate and realize like what I do have to offer. So
Mm-hmm.
going to the drawing board, I think a lot of organizations and companies are going to start lowballing people, and that certainly wasn't too much of an issue for me. I did ask
Mm-hmm.
for more with
Mm-hmm.
salary when it was
Mm-hmm.
offered, And they said yes. And so that's another thing that, you know, companies can always, if they don't feel comfortable giving you that salary, fine, but you can always ask for it.
Sure.
Um, and that's something I felt comfortable asking for, because I knew the, experience I was bringing to the table. I knew what my past experience was, and you know, coronavirus hit everybody. If you're working with an organization that's not understanding of why you were unemployed for a year, then they're not really worth the time to invest in.
Sure.
Uh,
Sure.
and this was not the case with this company. It was a fantastic.
Wow. Wow. Now, your thoughts on the size of a potential emergency fund. Dave
Yeah.
Ramsey recommends 3 to 6 months. I kind of like to err on the conservative side and say, maybe 6 months. Susie Orman, we talked about this last year, says 8 months. A couple weeks ago on the podcast, we talked about the fact that maybe in light of coronavirus, the emergency fund should be larger than that. Now, at the end of the day, we decided, well, probably not, because emergency money is set aside so that it's liquid, getting a lower rate of return, et cetera, et cetera. And especially in today's, market with Robinhood and the free trades and all the stuff you can get, even on ETFs. Maybe you don't want to tie up too much more money than
Mhm.
3, 6, something like that. But coronavirus lasted a year plus. And what are your thoughts? Do we need to re-examine the issue of the emergency fund, maybe something larger, or maybe not?
That's a good question. And during the pandemic, I think I wish I had a year worth of
Hmm.
emergency fund as a safety net. Uh, but this is a once in a lifetime kind of an experience.
Hmm.
I think there's one in every generation where you experience either, economic turmoil that is out of your control, or,
Hmm.
a social turmoil that is out of your control, that either leaves you unemployed or in a financial situation that you don't want to be in.
Hmm.
I think that moving forward, I will definitely have 6 months. I would for sure have 6 months. And it
Hmm.
seems responsible, and, you know, nothing detrimental to, my spending flow,
Hmm.
then I would put more in there. But as a recommendation, I would definitely say 6 months. I don't see within our generation's financial future that there would be something so detrimental that it would take, a large majority of Americans, and the world for that matter, out of jobs like this.
Hmm. Nothing like we've seen, although I suppose you never know. But
You
I
never
mean,
know, and that's kind of what the emergency fund is for. But I would say at least 6 months. I know that, people have toyed around with 3 months, and I would say that's not enough.
yeah, well, from personal experience, you
Yeah,
needed more than three.
yeah. I mean, just from that October to December time period, that's 3 months, and that's a holiday. That you're
Hmm.
not talking about 3 months where you're just spending the bare minimum. You got to plan in 3 months where you're not just, oh, it's your rent and your expenses. You have to think about everything else too.
Right.
Um,
Right, right. Now, you talked about last year paying off your debt, being debt free by
Mhm.
October, and you said you kind of had to stretch that out a little bit.
Yes.
But by what, November, December, January, you were still able to put yourself in a position, even in the most difficult of times, by making yourself debt free.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow, wow.
Yeah.
Tell me about how that felt.
It was one of those moments where you see on your bank account that there's zero in your
Right.
credit card, and it just looks weird. I open my app and I'm like, that's not right.
Hmm.
It's been so long for me. And, I graduated college in 2016. I think I opened my first credit card in 2012. And from 2012 to 2021, I haven't been out of debt. And
Right.
so, looking at that number, and even looking at that number get smaller, instead of
Hmm.
being, I think I told you I was like $6,000 in debt,
Hmm.
just getting it, watch that number get smaller. I was like, wow, that's great.
So there was an emotional pat
Yeah.
on the back to be able to open that up or to look at that app and see that number going down.
Oh yeah, I wanted to show everybody. I'm like, this is personal information, but I wanted to show like my fiance. His name's Taylor. I wanted to show
Hmm.
Taylor. I was like, I wanted to show the stranger in the grocery store, like, look at my credit card statement.
Right, right. No, very, very cool. And you run into someone that's still in school and they tell you, oh, well, debt's part of the experience. And your response to that is?
What kind of experience are you living? Like, did you want to be stressed? You're
Yeah,
already in school. Do you want to have that more stress to you? And, the opportunity and the doors that open to you when you don't have debt is
right.
just phenomenal.
Yeah.
You know,
The fact that you didn't have debt made it a little easier to continue to hang out and not take any old job, but to hold off in the early part of this year to get something that you really wanted to do that was in your wheelhouse.
yeah, it really did. And, I know a lot of um, my old coworkers who also experienced layoffs or furlough, they were
Hmm.
taking jobs anywhere and anywhere, including, working at Target. And I applaud that. That's such a hustle mentality. But there was also, we're in the middle of a pandemic. I don't want to put myself at a health risk there. Um, and two, I really wanted to accept a position in a job that would further my career.
Hmm.
And so I was willing to go do and work those jobs if I needed to, but having that emergency fund really enabled me to not have to.
Right, right. So, what are your plans on a go forward basis? I think I heard wedding.
I have to save up for a wedding, and we
Oh
have
my goodness.
been. It's been great. Yeah, we're getting married in October.
Uh-huh.
So we're very excited about that. We're saving away, and planning for honeymoon,
Hmm.
saving up for a honeymoon. We're hoping to go to Italy, so that's no cheap trip.
Nice.
Yeah, speaking of, and I think we were earlier talking about, the Venetian in Las Vegas.
Oh, Italy, very romantic. Boy, you guys are going to have a great old time, right?
Yeah, we're planning on it. That's the goal, if we're
And
able to
you
travel, of course.
and you're gonna pay for that with money that's saved rather than debt.
Yeah, we are. And the unfortunate thing, depending on how you look at it, the
Hmm.
fortunate thing for us and my mindset is wedding industry is cash based industry. You can't pay on
Hmm.
a credit card, and so a lot of vendors don't accept that.
Hmm.
And so it's been actually a very rewarding experience to be like, yes, I just paid off my $3,000 photographer in
Nice.
like a year or whatever,
Hmm. Hmm.
because they do incremental payments, but
Hmm.
you have to have the cash on hand to give it to them. So that's
Yeah,
been
yeah.
great.
And then beyond that, your fiance is still on board with personal financial wellness. You had said that he was actually did better than you in years past.
Oh my gosh, he's the best. I don't
Yeah.
know like how he learned this or how he picked it up. It came naturally to him.
Hmm.
But he naturally probably has 6 7 months savings uh, in his emergency fund as
Hmm.
is. Really good at
Hmm.
investing
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
just having a good head on his shoulder and knowing when you can spend money and when you can't.
Right.
And he makes it very much like a fun thing. It's like, okay, we can go out to dinner, but that just means like we can't do this later on, and it's never like a restrictive thing.
Right, right, right. Now, do the two of you have joint goals that you're starting to develop here with this new life
Oh,
that begins in October?
oh yeah. If you ask him, I have the next 5 years planned out. So, yeah. And this is a big financial saver for us. Both of us drive cars that we've paid off a long, long time ago. His car's 20
Right.
years old, mine is 15. So,
Mhm.
in the next 5 years, we're probably going to have children. And
Mhm.
neither of us want to be driving 15 to 20-year-old cars. So, our next big financial investment will be probably buying a car.
Mhm.
Um, and so, talking about that, kind of discussing how much we want to put up front on the car, how much, we feel comfortable paying in car payments each month, depending on our current rent situation.
Mhm. Mhm. Very cool. Very, very cool. So would you say that, coronavirus has been a good experience in terms of your personal finance?
I wouldn't say it's been good or bad. I would say
Mhm.
it's been educational. I think
Mhm.
it's yeah, you always have been told in at least for me, my family is, my dad is in the finance world,
Mhm.
and you hear it all the time. have 3 to 6 months savings, have 3 months to 6 months savings. And it wasn't until it happened to me that I was like, this is necessary. This
Hmm.
isn't a luxury item. This is necessary
Hmm.
uh, for your comfort and for your wellness.
Right.
You talk about financial wellness, and it's you don't want to have that stress, and having that safety net, it truly is liberating.
Yeah, over and over again, we've talked about this on the podcast, not only with you but with other guests. You know, the stress-free or less stress-filled life, to have a plan and to have an emergency fund, and really to start some long-term savings or retirement or towards a house, whatever it's going to be, the less stress in your life, and that's really, I think, one of the big goals, seems to me.
Oh yeah. Um there are so many stressors in life. This shouldn't be one of them.
Yeah.
It's planning, it's preparation, it's and just, educating yourself, and things like this podcast. I think this podcast is great because it's an easy way to figure out how to, you know, solve your financial issues, and how to
Right.
get it has to achieve financial wellness.
Right. We'd like to say just give us 20 minutes every Monday morning, and we'll give you that little booster shot and keep you thinking about your own personal success rather than the financial path that some Wall Street or Madison Avenue corporation wants you to proceed to, to benefit them. Let me ask you a couple of quick questions as we conclude here. Have you had your shots?
I have had my first one. My
Okay.
second one is coming up pretty soon.
Right. Any adverse reaction to the first shot?
I did have a little bit of adverse reaction to the first shot. Pretty
Hmm.
typical aches, chills,
Yeah.
headaches. I actually went to work and was able to
Hmm.
work just fine. It felt like I was really dehydrated and really tired.
Wow. And do you find it invigorating to think that you're walking around in society now with about an 85% protection?
Yes, I would say there's a level of comfort, especially,
Yeah.
I see
Yeah.
my elderly grandmother a lot.
Hmm.
She's fully vaccinated, but she's 80 years old, and there's just that level of comfort, knowing that at least she's protected, but there's also a degree of protection now that I have coming into her household.
Yeah. It's very invigorating. When I go to visit my folks, it's not like we feel like we have to mask up to go inside because they've had both theirs. I've had my first one, the second one's coming up.
Yeah.
And it's surprising how much it changes your outlook on things.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
There's Pasadena has indoor dining, and for the first time,
Hmm.
Taylor felt comfortable going indoor and to dine. And
Wow.
because we've had our first shot, and we're social distancing, we're being careful, but we went to Granville and we dined inside, so it was great.
Very, very nice. Another question. Do you have a Robinhood account?
No, I don't.
No? Okay. Do your fiance have a Robinhood account?
I don't know. I have
Okay.
to ask him.
I mean, all the millennials are, trading stocks and stuff on Robinhood. And my next question was going to be, do you have any of that Bitcoin stuff?
I do.
You do?
I do.
Good for you. Everybody's got this Bitcoin. I'm not a fan. I'm not getting it
Yeah.
yet, but
Well,
it's a huge thing, especially in the millennial world, right?
my brother, he works on Wall Street, and he
Hmm.
is kind of my financial stock advisor. So
Right.
he kind of like has full reign to go into my stock and kind of purchase what he thinks is a good investment, and he has done very well for me so far.
Wow.
I highly suggest having brothers who are
Good.
financially savvy in the stock world. But he bought me Bitcoin, and
Good
it's
for you.
done really well.
Good for you and good for him. But for all of our listeners out there, remember, we don't make any specific investment advice here on TFWP, and we're specifically not endorsing Bitcoin. The reason I bring it up is because it's just so damn interesting, and everybody's got some of it, except me.
And if you follow, it had a huge drop yesterday. So,
Yeah.
but that's the life of stock.
It's
Uh,
going to be ups and it's
yeah,
going to be downs. The whole stock market was down. What was it? A couple of days ago. The current administration comes out and says, "Well, we want to increase the capital gains rate. We want to double the capital gains rate." And the stock market goes, "Hold on there, hold on there."
whoa, whoa, whoa. uh,
Funny stuff.
yeah.
So, any last words or thoughts now that you have been successfully really through this whole coronavirus thing. I mean, you're back up in the air and flying again. You got to love
Yeah,
that.
busy, busy, busy. You know, I think the greatest advice that I can give you is that just like life, your financial journey is a journey. Don't get
Hmm.
discouraged because you only see small movements.
Hmm.
A movement is a good thing. And it is. If it takes you 5 years to get out of debt, that's 5 years well used. If it takes you 10 years to do it, whatever it is that your goal is, whatever small amount that you can do, that is a success. And each success should be celebrated. And doing the best you can and educating yourself and just continuing that uphill projection is everything.
Wow. Wow. Wise words coming from one of our favorite millennials. Amanda, thank you so much for joining us again. I appreciate you taking the time and sharing your personal journey with us. I enjoyed last time. I enjoyed this time, and maybe we'll see you again soon.
I would love that. And thank you so much for having me again. I thoroughly enjoyed it as well.
All right, I think that's a wrap, everybody. Tune in next week. We've got something very interesting that we're working on, including an interesting email. I want to talk about annuities and how those may or may not fit into somebody's financial plan, primarily retirement plans. And maybe we'll just have to have Amanda back. We'll talk to you next week. This is Dave Hagan, and you've been listening to the Financial Wellness Podcast.
You've been listening to the Financial Wellness Podcast, Dave's weekly message to keep you on your path to financial success. If you have a question that you would like Dave to answer on the podcast, go to thefinancialwellnesspodcast.com. You can leave an audio message with one click of a button, or type your message into the question box. Either way, it's sent right to Dave's phone. Remember, Dave will randomly draw from the submitted questions and pick the winner of a free 1-hour personal conversation with Dave to help you achieve your financial goals. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you receive the new episode notifications, or share the podcast via the app with your family and friends. This is your announcer, Nick Appel, wishing you every financial success.